Okay, so let's just put it on the table here. Okay, E.T. is frequently cited as one of the worst video games in history. I got to read a magazine that said that my game was single-handedly responsible for the crash of the video game industry in the early 80s. That's a good one. People are reticent to ask me about it. They think I'm very sensitive about it. Oh my God, you did the worst game of all time. Don't you want to hide? And it's like, no.
Howard Scott Warshaw. He was a video game programmer for Atari in the early 80s. He made some of the most beloved games for the Atari 2600.
I made Yar's Revenge, then I followed that with Raiders of the Lost Ark. I had two very successful games, both million sellers. I truly believed that everything I touched hopefully was going to turn to gold because I was going to put everything I had into it.
One fateful day, Howard received a call from the CEO of Atari asking him if he wanted to take on their highest profile game ever, E.T. the Extraterrestrial.
And I said, we definitely can do that.
But there was one major caveat.
It had to be something that related to the movie, and it had to be doable in 5 weeks. I had 5 weeks to do the game, so I was working all the time. E.T. was going to be a basic puzzle game with some challenges that you run around to solve, and if I redistribute the pieces among enough different random places, it makes a fresh challenge each time around, and bingo.
When it was released, E.T. was an immediate success, selling over 1 million copies. But a few months later, things started to turn.
Retailers are starting to find that the game is not moving, it's coming back. A lot of people are disappointed with it.
Because of the poor planning and tight production schedule, Howard failed to catch a fundamental flaw in the game's design.
There are too many times where you make a move, you do something, and suddenly you wind up somewhere else, now suddenly you're somewhere else, and there's too many places in E.T. where the user is disoriented. And that's a sin of which I am guilty, and I have been serving penance.
Shortly after E.T.'s release, the video game crash was in full swing. Disappointing sales and mismanagement forced Atari to restructure.
And in the next couple of months, Atari went from 10,000 employees to 2,000 employees.
During the turmoil, Howard left the gaming industry for good. He didn't think much about E.T. until nearly a decade later.
Well, by the early 90s, people started coming out with what a bad game E.T. was. I was just kind of surprised anybody was actually even talking about it.
Good afternoon. Some of those E.T. Atari games unearthed at a New Mexico landfill are now up for sale.
Beaten up cartridges on eBay are going for hundreds of dollars a piece.
So we had a whole online where fans could choose what game they wanted to see you play.
Okay.
They chose this, E.T. the Extraterrestrial.
Even 30 years later, this obscure thing that I did so long ago in just 5 weeks, it's still generating excitement and enthusiasm. I get emotional just talking about it now because I just felt I was at the center of something that is still meaningful. And that is a huge success. So when people ask me, was E.T. a failure? I don't mind when people call it that, but it'll never be a failure to me.